started doing this music thing, bro?
Okay. Okay. So I'm born and raised originally from Queens, New York, South Side Queens, New York. Born out there, raised out there. Basically came up in the South Side of Queens. And as far as this music, I've been kind of off and on rapping since I was about maybe 13 years old. So my story is a little different. I kind of started doing Christian rap from actually the onset. I was introduced to groups like DC Talk and another
Remember them?
little known artist named Danny D Boy Rodriguez, who started off in the Bronx, New York, and then moved out to Dallas, Texas. Unfortunately, he lost his life actually trying to evangelize and witness to teens that were involved in gangs. And allegedly, the story is that the local gang leaders didn't like that, so they kind of got rid of him. But it was those two artists that actually got me started, and so I started kind of penning rhymes from about 13 years old. And of course, growing up in New York City, hip hop was everywhere. So,
Yeah, yeah.
but
Facts.
yeah, yeah.
So you started penning rhymes. You was 13. Um, what was life back there in New York, man? At 13, what was the atmosphere? Was there a lot of Christian rap around that time when you started rhyming, or what was the scene around that time?
So, so the scene back then, let's see, I'm 13 at the time. So you got to think this is probably the mid 90s and everything like that. I'm really dating myself. But yeah, so it's about the mid 90s. So, rap was kind of relatively young, started in the mid 70s. So in the mid 90s is about 20 years old, rap and everything like that. Hip hop was still kind of new on the scene, especially in the mainstream. And so rap was kind of sort of getting its tracking, its footing. And so Christian rap was not really as much a thing. It was not widely accepted. So it was something very interesting because I was actually someone who grew up in the church, and so I had this identity on Sunday morning, and then of course Monday through Saturday. There's kind of like, okay, so how do you kind of bring the two together, because these two things,
Right.
Christianity and hip hop, were very much a very real part of who I was and who I am. And so, yeah, at that time, it was really maybe DC Talk that had gotten kind of mainstream recognition, and that was I guess, a somewhat a good introduction for mainstream audiences to hip hop. But then, of course, depending on who you ask, some people felt that it was a little too commercial. So it was still a kind of hodgepodge of things at the time.
So how what was the feeling like, man? Doing because I want to kind of go back and talk about, okay, you doing Christian hip hop. It wasn't popular, and it's still really not popular today, right? As in the aspect of what we look at as mainstream hip hop versus what we kind of want, Christian, rap is. But what was your struggle? Did your parents, man, like, because back then you got to think you're talking about when you're talking about the early parts of the early MCs, man. You didn't really have a lot of famous Christian other than DC Talk, and we didn't DC Talk, even though we didn't really look at DC Talk, man, as being like Christian rap. I didn't even think were, man. But I
Yeah,
think a lot of people still was listening to like mainstream hip hop, right?
right,
So,
right, right.
so what did your parents like? What did your parents say when you was trying to do Christian hip hop? Did they say, well, did they really at first did they say it was from the Lord, or did they say, oh man, that's that devil music? Why are you trying to do that? That ain't supposed to be in the church. Or what was that conversation like, man? Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So it was actually pretty interesting now that I think about it. My parents were pretty encouraging when I started off. I remember clear as day. one of my early raps when I wrote it, I would write it a certain kind of way. And I think there was a lyric in there that was kind of like, all right, you can't say that. I think it was, oh man, I'm trying to remember, but it was something that I said in the lyric, and my dad caught it right away. He's like, no, you got to rewrite that. You can't say that. So I was trying to find a word. Oh, like if I remember my first rap or one of my early raps, I said something. I was talking about the subject of Jesus coming back. So I said,
Right.
when he's coming back. Now that's a subject that we can't reject. Jesus is coming back, and that's a fact. Yo, listen up or I'll smack. And my dad was like, wait, who are you smacking? No, you can't write that. You have to rewrite that. So, and I don't know, I'm thinking like, why would I write that? Like looking back now. So my parents were pretty supportive of it because it was just one of those things where this was kind of coming onto the scene, and I had my mindset to do it within the church context, at the time. And so they're like, okay, here, you want to be creative, we'll encourage it. But they knew it was kind of like a thing that was kind of fleeting at the time. And it wasn't something that they were like, oh yeah, you're really good. You should really pursue this. It was like, okay, he wrote a rap, fine. He wants to do it in church here, just let him do it. And then we'll just go back to business as usual. So yeah.
And so you never actually went back to business as usual, but you did, but you didn't leave the rap alone. Did you
Yeah.
travel around at that time? At that time, like was there a little circuit, man? Did you ever go to other churches and rhyme with any other MCs like for the churches, or you were just kind of that new artist in an aspect of not a lot of Christian MCs? Like, did you get invited to other churches, man, or how? I mean, what was it like?
Yeah, so at about 13, 14, 15, I mainly stayed within the context of my church, my home church where I grew up. So I was just the local artist. So when they were having maybe like a youth night, they're like, hey, Richard can do his thing, whatever. And they would do that. So and so I kind of played around with it from about 13, 14, 15, picked it back up at 16. I remember I would ask my mother for her keyboard, and I would learn how to try to program the keyboard because this is back in the mid 90s, so I didn't have access to instrumentals and beats and everything like that. So it was starting to pick up ground, and I was starting to take it seriously. At the same time, it was interesting because, you know, growing up in church, if you have kids in church, on Sundays and whatever days during the week we're in church. But I think my parents weren't bearing in mind that Monday through Friday, when you send me out into the secular public school system, I'm in with the other kids, and this is what everybody is listening to. And so growing up, my house was very much, we don't listen to that. We don't listen to that. But at the same time, like if it appeared on like the Arsenio Hall show or some kind of televised show, all of a sudden it's like, yay, it's fine. Wait, this is the same music we can't listen to. So it was funny.
Stan Moss, glad to have you, Stan. Stan said, Great Q Records was the hardest gospel rap I heard, man. And I know you, man, knew about Great Tree, Lil Rascal. We see him online a lot, man. Antonio's Prime Minister,
Man.
yeah, man. Hey, Great Q Records, man, was hard. I think they actually are trying to. I heard they was trying to come back, from what I understood. They're trying to re-release Great Tree, man. Again, man. But yeah, Stan. Yeah, we know Great Tree too, man. Definitely, man.